Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Freightliner XC-Series motorhome, we're going to be showing you how to install the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system for the coach side only. But before we do that, let me check it out and make sure that this is going to be a kit that's going to work for you. Before we get too carried away talking about the braking system and kind of checking all that out, I figured it'd be beneficial to just spend a minute or two and refresh yourselves on the main things that we're going to need to flat tow our vehicle down the road in the first place. There's going to be a total of 5 main parts that you're going to need. The first one is going to be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. And the tow bar is going to be the second component. That's going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your motorhome. The third main component is going to be safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Chevy, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Colorado whenever you hit the brakes in your RV, helping to bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. There are a couple more parts that aren't absolutely necessary, but I definitely like to recommend just to give you a good experience overall. And one of them is what's called a battery charge line. And what that's going to do is essentially maintain or trickle charge your truck's battery whenever you're flat towing it behind your motorhome. That way, it won't be drained from the braking system. A lot of times the supplemental braking systems are going to use your truck's battery power. So what happens over time, they keep using power and power and power, and you just run out of juice. And so that's where that charge line is going to come into play. It's going to keep your battery full. That way when you get to where you're going, you'll hit the key and everything will start up. And the other thing that I suggest for the Colorado is what's called the automatic battery disconnect. And I always recommend this for these trucks because with these, whenever you flat tow them, you have to disconnect the battery. And so that really leaves you a couple of choices. One of them being to pop the hood, undo the battery whenever you're flat towing it, hook it back up whenever you're ready to start your truck. And I mean, is it doable? Sure, it'd probably get annoying over time. And that's where something like this would come into play. All right, so instead of having to deal with all that, you simply just push the button and disconnect the battery. Whenever you're ready to start the truck, push it again, power comes on, and you're ready to roll. With that out of the way though, let's talk braking system. So there's a handful of different options out there that I always like to recommend. If you have air brakes on your motorhome, and want a permanent type system, this one is hands down the one that I always suggest. Extremely reliable, super easy to figure out. Essentially, once it's installed, you hook up an airline and your breakaway switch tether, and that's it. You don't have to turn anything on or make any adjustments or anything like that. If you're looking for a more portable type or less permanent type system, the Blue Ox Patriot 3 is a really good solution for you. That's going to work with motorhomes that have air brakes or hydraulic brakes. So I feel like those are beneficial to some people if you change vehicles a lot. So I know some people show up every couple of years with the new car setting up their flat tow. And so that system would be really beneficial for those of you that do that. You like to kind of stay in a new car. You don't have to take anything out, your old system out. You can take the portable one, pop it in, and essentially be done. Or same thing with the motorhome. If you change this up a lot, you can have that constant with that portable braking system. Downside to those though is they take up a little bit of space, and it's something you're going to have to set up and disconnect every time you want to flat tow or unhook. Not the end of the world, don't take very long, but you still do have to do it. And then you have braking systems for those of you that have hydraulic brakes. Okay, and with those, the system that I always like to recommend is the Demco Stay and Play Duo. one of my favorite systems. It's just like the Air Force One in a sense of terms of reliability, easy to use and figure out, and so on. So, you know, if you know, whatever your situation is, there's a braking system for you. But with that said, let's focus a little more today on our Air Force One and what it's going to do. Like I said, it's designed for motorhomes with air brakes, and it's one of them things where once you have this installed, you're going to realize how big of a game changer it can really be in terms of safety and everything else along those lines. With this setup, one of the nice things about it is the fact that it is truly proportional. And so what that means is it's going to give us the best feel and braking performance possible. And it's going to match however much pressure we apply to the brakes inside of the motorhome. Our Colorado is going to match that pressure. So it's going to stop everything as one whole unit, if that makes sense. So kind of give you an example on how that works. Say if we're going down the road, maybe stoplight up ahead, let off the gas and kind of just ride the brake a little bit, right? Push it down a little ways. The Colorado's brake pedal is going to do the same thing. On the other hand, let's say if we're going down the highway and big accident up ahead or something, and we really have to mat that brake pedal down and come to an emergency stop, Colorado's going to do the same thing. So, you know, like I said, it's going to slow everything down as one whole unit. It'll be much more predictable and making it that much more safe. This kit is the wireless coach link, and essentially what that means is it's going to come with this guy right here. And so you plug this into your cigarette lighter, and essentially this is just an indicator light. So whenever the brakes are being pushed down in your Colorado, whenever you're flat toeing it, so for example, I'll hit the brake in the motorhome, which should hit the brakes back there. When I hit that, you can see it lights up red. And that's letting us know that the brake pedal back there is being pushed down. So just a convenient way to kind of keep an eye on things. At least you know real quick, I know the brake pedal's working back there, if something feels off or whatever. So it just gives you an indication on kind of what's going on behind you and inside of the Colorado. This kit is going to have what's called a breakaway switch, and that's what this tether is going to here. So that one end connects to your motorhome's hitch, the other goes to the breakaway switch. And what this is going to do, this is a safety feature essentially. So if you were to experience an unlikely disconnect, this pin would get pulled out, and what that's going to do is apply the brakes in your Colorado just to help get things back under control. Other than that, at the end of the day, if you have air brakes and are looking for a permanent type system, definitely the way to go. What's cool too, even if you do end up upgrading say your motorhome in the future or your vehicle in the future, you can also get second vehicle kits too. So you can replace just the parts on whatever you upgraded and still keep the rest of the stuff to make everything work. So you kind of grow into it, if you will, over time. But, you know, as far as getting this installed, really not too bad. It is kind of a bummer. You'll have to get under the motorhome and hook up a couple things under there. Not really difficult, just tight, you know, but thankfully it's something you only have to do one time, and once it's done, you're done. You go out and enjoy yourself, right? But if you'd like to see how that is done, feel free to follow along. We'll go ahead and get everything installed together now. To begin our installation on our motorhome side, we're going to be working essentially just in front of our rear axle, and we have to get all the components and airlines and fittings installed. I want to mention you don't have to have a lift to do this. We just get it up in the air so we can see what we're doing a little bit easier, and hopefully give you guys at home a better visual as well. But this is definitely doable on the ground, just be a little bit tighter. Underneath the motorhome, we are just in front of our rear axle, and the first thing that you need to do is find a good spot to mount up your tank. So it turns out right here in this area, it's a perfect spot. It's close to our lines that we're going to be teeing into, and it's out of harm's way and everything else. And it turns out there's actually a factory bracket here holding on this air valve. I just removed the two nuts off of that, and the bracket on our tank already has some slotted holes in it, and so this is able to just push right up in place, and then I can simply tighten them nuts back down. And that's what's keeping it secure. This thing is not going anywhere. So once this thing is mounted, we're gonna have a total of 3 airlines that we need to hook up. All right, and you're gonna have this one here, which will be the supply line, and you'll plug in a piece of airline tubing into the quick connect fitting, and I'll show you in a minute how to do that properly and how to cut it properly and everything else. But you'll have one plugged into there, and then this one will go to your metered air, and so you'll plug one into there, and both of them lines are just going to shoot up about a foot above us. So that's where all of our main connections are. And then this one here, this is going to go back to the fitting at the very back of our motorhome that we can hook up. And this is what's actually going to give air to the vehicle side when we have it plugged in, towed behind our motorhome. So we'll get to this one in a minute. Let's focus on the the metered air and the supply line. Like I said, those are going to go up maybe a foot or so and get plugged in to the main lines up top. So our supply line, what that's going to mean is it's going to have constant air pressure all the time, and it's usually the thicker line. And in our case, it's this thick green line. And so what you want to do with that is make sure all the air is depleted out of the system, because obviously if you cut that line with 100 plus PSI in it, could get interesting. But to get the air out, you just hit the brakes a bunch with the engine off, and eventually all the pressure will come out. But what you're going to do is cut that line clean, take the included quick connect fitting, simply plug it in, and obviously plug in the the air line into the other one that came off of our tank. Same exact deal with our metered air connection. So this is our metered air connection, and usually this is a smaller line. But sometimes there will be a couple of these. But with the metered air, what you're looking for, it's only going to have air pressure when you hit the brakes. So you can test it by starting the motor up, getting some air pressure into the system, and then you can unplug this line and have an assistant hit the brakes. And when they hit the brakes, if air shoots out of this line, then that's how you know it's the metered air. But same concept. Once you've figured that out, cut that line clean, put in your T, and then plug in the line that comes from our new tank. And I want to say too, with these lines, before you plug these quick connects in, make sure they're clean. Take some rubbing alcohol or some brake cleaner, something like that, and just wipe them clean, because a lot of times these can have like undercoating and dirt and stuff on them and then cause a leak. So make sure you're nice and clean, get them plugged in, and once this is done, we can route the remaining airline coming out of our tank all the way to the back of our motorhome. So now at the back of our motorhome, I ran our airline tube back here, and it's just so difficult to see underneath there, but pretty straightforward. Run this all the way back, do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts, and this is going to get connected to this fitting. And this fitting here I just secured to our fiberglass here. It's pretty thick, and I drilled a couple holes through it. Just use some nuts and bolts to get that secure. So I talked about how you want to cut these lines to plug them into the quick connect fittings. And so you want to use a tool like this, or a tubing cutter, or a regular straight edge. And you want to cut it and inspect it. So you want this to be straight and clean. You don't want any like rough edges or burrs on it, because those can potentially cause a leak. So don't use regular snips. Don't use your regular pair of dikes or cutters to do this, because it'll pinch the airline and then you'll probably get a leak. So, use something like this or some of the other tools I just suggested. But from there, you're just going to simply just plug that right in. You'll feel it kind of snap into place, and it'll lock in there, and you'll be good to go. So now that we have everything hooked up, what I like to do, start the motorhome, fill it up full of air, check for any air leaks. So by checking, you can obviously listen, or a better way is to take some soapy water, spray down where we're working. If you see any bubbles forming, you know you have a leak. If you don't, you know you're in good shape. If you do have a leak, drain the air, unplug the line. With these quick connects, you can kind of just hold the end of the connect with your finger and then pop the line out. And do that, recut the line, plug it in again, and check it again until you verify that you don't have any leaks. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system for just the motorhome side on our 2019 Freightliner XC-Series motorhome.